Hello, I'm R.G.E and I mostly speedrun obscure N64 games. These games generally don't have a lot of speedrunning documentation, so in this series I want to document my personal experience when speedrunning these games. I'll therefore cover the history of the game as a speed game, talk about speed strats, interesting movement tech, and glitches, along with the world record progression for the game. I hope you enjoy. So, in my last video about Bug Bumble, I introduced the holiday special speedrunning event, where for Easter and Christmas, my friends and I would vote on an N64 game to speedrun and compete to see who could get the best time, within a set time frame. Well, for Christmas 2022, we voted on Turok Dinosaur Hunter, the first game in the Turok series. Now, before I talk about my experience running the game, let's discuss a bit about the game in general and its speedrunning history. Actually, before we move on, I want to clarify something. In the intro for this video, I mentioned that I would cover obscure games in this series. Turok isn't really an obscure game, and if you look at the speedrunning leaderboards, there are over 30 people on the list. However, the leaderboards I'm showing is for the PC remastered version. The N64 leaderboards are a different story. And in fact, when I speedran the game, there were only 2 names on the leaderboard. And since then, only 2 more have been added. Granted, there are at least 2 runners who have not submitted their runs to the leaderboard, which we didn't know about at the time. So, although Turok as a franchise is not obscure, you could say that speedrunning the N64 version is, to some extent. And one disclaimer, from here on out I will be referring to the N64 version of Turok when I mention Turok, unless stated otherwise. The PC version of this game has a much bigger community and a much richer history when it comes to speedruns, and I want to make it very clear that this video is only about the N64 version. Now, Turok, as most of you probably know, is a first-person shooter where you play as Talset or just Turok, and you have to fight dinosaurs, humans, and aliens in both jungles and sci-fi looking buildings, and that's just about it for the premise. As for the gameplay, you have to run, jump, and shoot your way through 8 levels to beat the game. All the levels except the last one have keys that you need to collect, which allow you to progress to the next level. All the levels need to be played and all the keys have to be collected, so routing the levels and deciding what order to play them in can vary from run to run. However, all runners essentially have to do the same tasks, so changing the level order doesn't really change the time very much, besides minor walking distances between levels. Regarding the movement, like many first-person shooters, it is faster to run and strafe at the same time in order to get speed values from both actions at once. And that's just about it for the movement in the game. Just strafe run as fast as you can through the levels and collect the keys. Now, the first person to do any sort of Turok speedrunning was David Marshmallow Gibbons, or just Marsh for short. He only did one segmented run, which clocked in at 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 54 seconds. As this run is segmented though, I won't be including it on my world record progression, but it is definitely notable for being the first to take on the task of running Turok on the N64. This run didn't really introduce any glitches or noteworthy strats, besides a few tight jumps and some death warps. Instead, Marsh just played the game pretty fast from beginning to end. Now, the first runner to take on Turok in a single segment was a runner called MSDS3170. We can see by looking at their splits on their first uploaded PB that they most likely achieved a time of 59 minutes and 9 seconds at some point. That first uploaded run, however, was a 57 minute and 34 second run set on the 16th of February 2014. This run also didn't really introduce any noteworthy strategies and just played the game mostly as intended. Then, around 1 month later, a runner named Forrest Natus Joplin Hinton claimed the world record with a time of 55 minutes and 11 seconds on the 22nd of March 2014. And this is the run you can still find on Speed Demo's archive to this day. Forrest added in a few glitches and tricks. Most of the glitches in the game revolve around getting Turok stuck in the level geometry, and Forrest would use that to skip a few sections. I don't know precisely how this glitch works, but apparently it has something to do with how Turok interacts with out of bounds, and when touching some walls, Turok is partially out of bounds, which allows him to get stuck on the wall. The first example is in level 3, the Ancient City, where instead of going around to the stairway to reach the next section of the level, Forrest jumped into the corner and got Turok stuck. He then jumped, and with each jump he gained a little height. He then kept jumping until he was all the way up on the ledge, completely skipping the need to go around and take the stairway. Then, in level 2, the jungle, Forrest implemented 2 wall climbs to skip small sections of the level. The first one was here, where he again got Turok stuck in the wall and climbed up to get to the teleporter quicker. This skipped having to go around this section of the level, saving a few seconds. Then, later in level 2, he got stuck here in this wall and climbed up, which took him directly to this bridge. This allowed him to skip walking around to this slope to reach the plateau and running across the plateau to reach the bridge. In level 6, the Treetop Village, he implemented a trick he dubbed the shotgun launch. After going through a teleporter in level 6, you're normally supposed to run around to collect one key, then proceed to another teleporter, which takes you to a second key before reaching the end of the level located here. Forrest, however, made sure to get a checkpoint right before the teleporter. After coming through the teleporter, he went to a wall over here and got Turok stuck in the wall. Again, I don't fully know how this works, but if you get Turok stuck in certain geometries and keep running while stuck in place, he will build up speed. This might have something to do with Turok's vertical speed cap being a lot higher than his horizontal speed cap. So, while stuck, the game considers Turok to be airborne and in a falling state, which builds up vertical speed. Then, if you fire a gun, Turok will get unstuck and launch out of the wall with all that speed. Forrest was able to use that speed boost with a well-timed jump to launch across this gap, which you're normally not supposed to be able to cross. From there, he could first collect the second key and then essentially make his way backward, so to speak, through the level to the first key. After collecting that, he could death warp to the checkpoint he had set right before the teleporter. From there, he did the shotgun launch one more time to go straight to the end of the level. With these 2 shotgun launches, the route got significantly shorter. Now, as for the glitch discoveries in the game's history, it's hard to say exactly who discovered which trick. On Speed Demo's archive, Forrest credits the TAS made in 2008 by Bossman as a source for some of these tricks. However, Bossman's TAS is in part based on an older TAS made by NFQ in 2005. And NFQ also made some suggestions for the newer TAS as well. In the older TAS, NFQ claims to have discovered many of the tricks themselves, but also credits Le Courier 103 for some unknown discoveries. So in some ways, it's hard to pinpoint exactly who discovered which tricks for the game, but just know that NFQ and Bossman are responsible for a lot of the glitches and tricks covered in this video. Okay, so back to the history. A few months later, MSDS3170 got back to work and reclaimed the world record with a time of 54 minutes and 59 seconds on the 30th of September 2014, followed by a 51-minute flat run on the 24th of October the same year. After this, the main speedrunning champion of Turok for the N64 emerged. A runner named Sander Goth claimed the world record with a time of 49 minutes and 32 seconds on the 1st of January 2015. Sander then proceeded to take the run to new heights over the next 3 months, gradually achieving better PBs until finally, on the 19th of March 2015, he set his 9th world record, clocking in at 44 minutes and 32 seconds. This last record is incredibly strong, beating the previous one by almost a minute, and it's so impressive in fact that now, almost 10 years later, it's still the world record. In fact, Sander is still the only person to have played the game in under 50 minutes, so nobody is even close. Now, Sander did add one trick into the run. In level 3, when you reach this point, you normally have to make your way along the cliff and platform your way to the top. Sander, however, discovered that you could wall jump up the wall here, allowing him to skip all the platforming and reach the top right away. This trick had been used in the TAS, but Sander discovered a much better and more consistent spot to get Turok stuck, making the trick more viable for runs. Now, as described in my last video about Bug Bumble, I got some friends together for a speedrunning group or event called Holiday Special, where a few other N64 speedrunners and I would suggest games and then vote on a game to speedrun for a few weeks every Christmas and Easter to see who could get the best time. For Christmas 2022, we voted on Turok and speedran the game for a few weeks. This time, 3 people participated: me, Bluescreen18, and the Kovic. We didn't really discover anything useful at that point and didn't get anywhere close to the world record, but we had a good time and at least added a few more names to the leaderboard. Bluescreen18 won the event with a time of 50 minutes and 26 seconds, achieving a second place time on the overall leaderboard. So congratulations to Bluescreen for winning the event. My PP to this day is a 53 minute and 3 second run. And that's just about it for my journey with Turok. I'll tell you a bit more about my thoughts on the game in the last section of the video. As for the future of Turok speedrunning, there hasn't been a lot of activity for the N64 version, but there are some glitches and tricks I would like to talk about that show promise. The first is a glitch that, as far as I can tell, was discovered by Bluescreen during the Holiday Special event. Bluescreen found out that when running up against certain walls with a low ceiling close to Turok, sometimes if you jump at just the right spot and angle, Turok will start moving in a straight line through the walls and out of bounds. When you then let go of the running button, Turok will snap back towards the spot you originally jumped from. However, he doesn't always snap all the way back, so sometimes if you go far enough, you end up out of bounds after the snap. So let's say you start your glitch around here, fly out of bounds to here, and then release the running button, Turok will snap to around here, between the 2 points. While you're out of bounds, you can sort of fly around and collect ammo, health, weapons, and even keys, but you cannot activate teleporters or checkpoints. This is because while in this state, Turok is actually in 2 places at once. Turok's actual location and coordinates and collision are still back where you started the glitch, in bounds, but the camera and weapon display are out of bounds. So in some sense, it's like Turok's soul leaves his body while in this state. Now, this seems like something that could completely break the game, but you can't really travel much while out of bounds, because it's as if the game has a magnet constantly pulling Turok back in bounds again. So no matter how much you try to move towards other sections of the map, you always end up back at your starting point. In this state, the out-of-bounds camera version of Turok can collect ammo, health, keys, and other items, but he cannot activate teleporters or checkpoints, which severely limits the usefulness of the glitch. It's a very strange glitch, and I have spent a lot of hours experimenting with it and trying to understand it, but so far we have not found anything useful, and I still haven't really wrapped my head around how exactly all of this works yet. However, I do think this glitch shows a lot of potential. So for any glitch hunters out there in need of something to do, feel free to try this one out and see if you can figure something out or break it even further. There are also 3 skips that have not been implemented into the run using a glitch that allows Turok to gain a lot of height. The first one is in the TAS by Bossman in level 7, The Lost Land. Normally, you're supposed to enter this cave and step on this teleporter, which takes you to this area, where you have to kill a few enemies. This, in turn, raises these pillars, giving you access to the teleporter at the top. From there, you're teleported back to the other area in a different cave, which lowers these bars and raises the pillars here, allowing you to continue with the level. Bossman discovered that by wedging Turok into the wall using the strafe button right at the edge of this cliff, Turok will get stuck. He can then let go of the strafe button, and if done correctly, Turok will start gaining height along the wall. Why he gains height, I don't really know, but while it's happening, Turok is also gaining speed. So similar to the shotgun launch in level 6, when you shoot, Turok will get launched from the wall. Bossman then managed to land on this ledge to continue with the level. By doing this, he completely skipped this area. Since then, I have discovered that if you gain enough height, it's also fairly easy to launch all the way to this section, making the landing area much bigger and more viable for runs. The problem with this trick is that gaining height at the start is very inconsistent. But if a consistent method to gain height is found, this skip might be viable for full game runs. The next skip using this height glitch is in level 4, the Ruins. In level 4, you're supposed to start by jumping off this cliff into the water. Swim through here to this teleporter, which takes you to this area, where you have to platform through a bunch of tight ladders and cliffs, leading to another teleporter that brings you back to the starting area, but this time you're up on this cliff where the first key is obtained. This key was always tantalizingly close when you started the level, but we never found a way to get up there. However, while I was writing the script for this video, I decided to do some glitch hunting and found a way to get up there, using 2 of these height glitches. First, you have to go to this edge next to this wall to gain height, allowing you to launch up onto this ledge, which you're normally not supposed to reach. You can then go to this edge and perform the height glitch again to gain a lot of height there. After gaining enough height, you can jump back towards the start, and if you're high enough, you can reach the cliff with the key. Even though this skip is pretty convoluted, you can completely skip this big platforming area. This skip is very difficult, and I still don't understand how it works completely, especially how to get enough height on the second part. But again, if we find a consistent method to gain height, this could save around 20 seconds. The third height glitch can be performed in the last section of level 2. After reaching this ledge, you normally have to jump down here, swim through this section, then go through a cave system before reaching the outside where you can gain access to this key. However, I discovered that you can perform the height glitch on this ledge right here, and after gaining enough height, it's just barely possible to jump down and navigate between these walls to reach the ledge here and get to the key early. I should mention that the walls in this level extend endlessly upwards, so jumping over the walls is not an option. You have to carefully navigate the walls by spinning Turok correctly towards the ledge. Like the others, this trick is incredibly precise, so I don't know about the viability of implementing this one in 2 runs. While these height glitches are somewhat promising, the main issue holding back their viability for full game runs is the height gaining part. Sometimes when you get stuck and let go of the running button, Turok goes a little bit up but then just stops. While other times he soars up for a long time and gains a lot of height. All of these skips require a significant amount of height, so if we could find consistent setups to achieve good height for these tricks, they would most likely become very doable with practice. The next glitch I was going to cover here was sort of the holy grail of Turok speedrunning and involves a strange wrong warp that takes you directly to the final boss of the game, using portals that randomly spawn around the levels. When playing the game normally, the game sometimes spawns these blue portals in random locations. If you enter these, the game will take you to a bonus level, and once you finish the bonus level, you're sent back to the level you were originally in. A Redditor named Shamrock34 reported having entered one of these portals and wrong warped right into the final boss fight in the game. Another speedrunner named Shoehorse commented on that post, saying it had also happened to them during a casual blind race through the game, even providing a clip of the instance. However, while I was writing this script, Bluescreen managed to solve the problem and figure out how this works. Unfortunately, this is achieved by tilting your cartridge in the console, so it's not allowed for the any % leaderboards. Bluescreen, however, did a few runs with this cartridge tilting wrong warp trick and achieved a time of 2 minutes and 14 seconds on the 23rd of June 2024 by wrong warping from the very first blue portal in the game straight to the final boss. This is not a valid run for the leaderboards, but I find it very impressive and fascinating nonetheless. As for other glitches, there are many used in the PC version of the game that are not implemented in the N64 version, which might be possible but have simply not been tested thoroughly enough yet. There is still work to be done for the N64 version to see just how low this run could possibly go. And I think with a bigger community looking into the N64 version, we might see a lot of improvement. Now, what do I think of the run? The first thing I'd like to mention is that before running Turok, I had never speedran a first-person shooter before. I always had a simplistic notion of first-person shooter games, thinking that the movement was just about going from point A to point B. However, through Turok, I learned that this is by no means the case. The movement in first-person shooters, or at least in Turok, is much more dynamic and nuanced than I had assumed. Since you're strafing, knowing when you're on the straightest line can be tricky, and changing your strafe while maintaining top speed during platforming is extremely difficult to do optimally. In my runs, I would lose minutes compared to Sander's world record just due to movement, and I honestly don't even know where the time loss comes from because I lack a solid understanding of the mechanics. In a way, I was humbled by this game, and I now have a lot more respect for the complexity of movement within first-person shooter games. Now, overall, I really enjoy the movement in Turok. Zooming through the levels feels fantastic. There are some tight platforming sections that are very satisfying to complete quickly, alongside some combat scattered throughout the levels, although there isn't a lot of combat since you can often just run past enemies. Personally, I appreciate this aspect because I generally don't enjoy combat-heavy speedruns. However, there are a few bosses and they can be quite challenging. I didn't particularly enjoy the boss fights because I felt they disrupted the flow of strafing through the game, but I'm sure many people find them enjoyable. The N64 version receives a lot of criticism for having a relatively narrow field of view, which means that when you're strafe running, you often end up looking at nothing but walls, making it hard to see where you're going. In contrast, the PC version has a much wider field of view, allowing you to see much further ahead while strafing. Another common complaint about the N64 version is the fog. Due to the limited hardware, there's a lot of fog in the game, restricting visibility. However, neither the limited field of view nor the fog bothered me while running the game. I viewed them as additional challenges that a speedrunner must overcome, requiring a solid understanding of the level layout to navigate despite the lack of clear visibility. While I can see how this is an issue for casual playthroughs, once you know the layout, there isn't much need to see far ahead. So to me, this isn't as significant an issue as many might make it out to be. At least for speedrunning, that is. Now, the biggest downside to Turok as a speed game, in my opinion, is the extra lives and the game over system. This run is hard, one of the hardest speedruns I've ever done. Mainly because if you game over, you have to start all over again from the beginning. You can only die 2 to 3 times during the run before getting a game over, depending on how many death warps you use and how many of these life force tokens you collect along the way. With all the difficult bosses and tight platforming, it's challenging to get through quickly without dying. I spent only a month learning and running the game, so I know you can improve and die less over time, but for a beginner, this run is absolutely brutal. Just finishing a run is incredibly tough. This always made me extremely anxious during my attempts, especially when I got far into the game. As my PP improved, my anxiety increased, leading to even more mistakes. This is probably the main reason I'm not particularly excited to speedrun Turok again. It's just nerve-wracking. For many people, that kind of thrill might be just what they're looking for, but for me, I prefer speed games where I can relax and do no reset runs whenever I want, without the fear of a game over that ends the run. So yeah, that's about it for my thoughts on Turok. I want to thank Sander Goth for his help in making this video, and the Turok speedrunning community as a whole. A big thanks to Bluescreen18 and the Kovic for running the game with me, and of course, thank you dear viewer for watching. The next game I will cover is Loadrunner 3D, a pretty obscure title that surprised me with its depth for speedrunning. I plan on making a video like this one for every N64 game I run, so consider subscribing if you'd like to see more breakdowns of games like these. Lastly, again, thank you so much for watching.